Yeah, so once I've welded this cap up with a flange on the top, that's then compressing the bearings between the bottom plate here and the shoulders of the bearing case. So that now rotates without too much problem. I've also tightened the central nut up, the main nut on the inside and underneath, with a nice large spanner. Now I've done that, there isn't any side play, or virtually nothing in this. It's important that there isn't much play sideways in the bearings, otherwise the whole gun shield and everything is going to swing around from left to right and look very loose and poorly made. So next step is probably going to be working on these sides, which will have to be welded on. That's the side for there, and this one here to be welded on here. So I'll be getting round to that next. Now you can see the front of this area here is curved. Now the reason that's curved is obviously because, well, presumably because on the real one there'd be a large gear wheel inside this casing, which would swing over into this area here, and then the gear, which is in the vertical tube, the worm gear system on the side here, would engage with that gear and give it the traverse. But I'm not fitting any of that in. I'm just keeping it simple to keep the costs down. I don't fancy trying to make my own worm gear and teeth, so I'm going to do away with it. And to stop the gun actually swinging around when it's being transported, down here on the load bearing member, both sides, there's a hinge shackle point. Now basically a large plate gets mounted between there and there, and it comes out probably about 8 inches, and on this end here it has a linkage which comes up and it fastens underneath the gun cradle, and that stops the whole thing swinging around when it's being transported. So the gun should still elevate. The elevation should still work when this thing is fixed on. I'll show you a picture on a real one just here. Yeah, so from that picture you can see that the elevation of the gun should still function, but the left-right traverse will be locked. Right, so that's what I'll call the angel's wings, for obvious reasons. So they're welded on. I've got a little bit of reinforcing to do. I've got to put webs in. If you look at the picture, you'll see that there's several webs which have to be welded in to make the sides more rigid. So I'll get onto that. Right, I've put a good few hours work in now on this gun mount, and you can see it's starting to take shape quite well now. If I do some close-ups on it, this it's not quite the same dimensions in terms of this part as the real one. I've just used whatever bits of metal I had lying around to get something that looks fairly similar to it. I'll put a few shots of the real one here. Yeah, so you can see I've just used bits of tubing and I've welded that tube in onto the side, and what I've done is I've put that shaft running through there, which is M12 studding. Now if I rotate that round back to how I had it, the idea is that eventually I'll have a universal joint on here. This is one I actually found kicking around somewhere, someone had lost. Basically you can position the universal joint out at any angle, and this would be the gadget which would adjust the traverse. So on the end of here, going back about another foot or so, it has a hand wheel which you rotate, and that's what would control the traverse of the gun. So I'm probably going to use one that's slightly smaller than this. This is a 1/2 inch one off a socket set, but I think a 3/8 one would work better, and I could file this M12 studding square, possibly build it up with a bit of weld and file it square. Either that or just weld the socket directly onto it. Now when it comes to stripping the shield off, obviously the shield's going to sit right here and it'll have a hole running through the shield. Hopefully it'll all slide in through that gap there. I've made it a little close, but I think it'll go in 1/4 inch plating. So it'll have a large hole in the plate which this will all fit through. It could be that I don't actually need that nut there or that washer, and the plate will go right up against the face of that. Then I just need a 1/2 inch hole running in, and if I've got the socket fixed right up against the drop rod and up against the facing there, then all I need on this end is a nylock nut which I can unscrew, and then I can take the whole rod back out that way when I want to strip it down to maybe take the shield off. So that should be quite easy. Yeah, I've welded the webs I should say, on for support. I've also welded a little rib on here, sorry, a little web on here. Now this heavy duty piece of bar with a hole in, this sort of flange thing, that's a position where it's going to have an M10 bolt running through to hold the shield. So the shield's basically going to sit in this plane running across here, and if I got the geometry right, it should run directly in line with the centre of the traverse mechanism. So the shield should run straight through the centre of the bearing. If you don't get the shield running straight through the centre of the bearing, then when you rotate the traverse, the shield will hit the wheels, or the you know, those swing things which are like wheel arches. Yeah, it will basically hit those things if you don't have the geometry correct. I've also welded a couple of ribs in on the inside here. Not as many as the real one would have. The real one would have more of them round at the back, but I have a feeling I'm going to be doing something later on in this area, so I'm not going to do it right at this moment. But I think for the weight and the stresses involved in this gun, I think what I've done is sufficient, and you won't really see all these parts once the gun cradle is fitted in. Now I've got to do some sort of mounting blocks for the gun cradle to fit on. They're going to be fitting on here and here. So that's going to be something I'm going to have to work on possibly next. The other thing I need to do is it has some webs which are shaped and come out at right angles to this plate here, so they're sort of slightly triangular shaped. They blend into the metal here and up here. In fact, up here they curve round in an unusual sort of pattern. There's like a semicircle. Where they bent round and they're welded up against this steel. So that's something to work on. I don't know whether I'm going to do this semicircle at the top. It depends how artistic I'm feeling, whether I bother or just put a straight sort of web across. I may just do that. I've welded the pipe up across the back here as well. I'm not sure what the function of that is. I suspect it actually helps you if you're pulling the thing or something like that, but obviously it's reinforcing. And then it has two more pieces of this same pipe, one which is welded on in line with that one but on this side, and then it sweeps back this way and is mounted against the shield with one bolt running through it. And it has the same here from that side, which runs back towards the shield that way. And it should, if the geometry works out, be just underneath the toolbox which is on the shield on the right hand side if you stood behind the gun. Yeah, so it's looking fairly okay. This little piece of metal here is supposed to be left sticking out the back there, and that is part of the mounting for the elevation of the gun. Basically the elevation's handled by some form of screw jack, and it has a shaft running back from approximately here with a hand wheel fitted in this area, which runs down, and it's all sort of inside a pipe, and then I'm presuming there's a universal joint, sort of like this one, in there, like that, and then that runs over and goes into a screw jack. Now basically the screw jack works in that the shaft is rotated that way and another shaft runs up and down that way, and on the top of this shaft here it has a pivot which is attached to the gun cradle. So basically by adjusting that screw jack up and down alters the elevation of the gun. So it's coming on okay. These are M8 bolts and I've got them running all the way through the casing from the underneath upwards, and they can be taken in and out not too difficultly, so that's alright. You can put a spanner underneath. Yeah.